excited to hear from my good friend Brett Binkley, who's the CEO of Binkley Barfield. It's a 300-person engineering company based in Texas. Let's hear what he's got to say. Brett, super excited for you to come on the show. We've known each other a long time and just wanted to dive into your story a bit. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So you are the CEO of Binkley Barfield, which is a civil engineering company, although you guys do a lot of different types of engineering and construction. And I was hoping maybe we could talk a little bit about your background and kind of how you came to be into that company. And you've got several hundred employees now. So let's start in the beginning and find out how that all came together for you.
Sure. So actually, we do not actually do any construction. We are simply a design firm with construction management as well. And so, so I made a decision. This is a family-owned business that was started back in January of 1972 by my father. And I came into the business consciously not being an engineer. And so it's a little bit of a pedigree situation when you come into an engineering firm with the future long-term intent of being an executive in the firm and don't have an engineering degree. But I do have degrees in business, finance, and MBA. So that's given me a little bit of a leg up so that I'm not caught into the box of just doing design engineering work. So I started here in 1990. So it's been quite a number of years now. Actually, my first year of work here was in 81, but it just progressed from there. I've done everything from basically running blue lines, which blue line machines don't even exist anymore, to painting, reserved on parking spaces, to running deliveries, to I was our IT director for about 10 years. I've run our business development side of the world, and I've been our CEO for over 20 years now. And so we do mainly infrastructure design. So I like to say we design quality of life. We do roads, bridges, water, wastewater, sewage treatment plants, those kinds of things. A lot of utility work where you have to move certain utilities to widen the road or something of that nature. So yeah, it's been an interesting run over all these years. I've seen a lot of change and worked in a lot of different positions.
Yeah. It's interesting just talking about the blue lines and painting reserved parking signs. My first job was actually doing maintenance at my dad's medical building. And, literally I started when I was 13 years old, sweeping floors and cleaning windows and taking out trash. And 30 years later, I bought the building from him. So yeah. It's kind of cool. And you it sounds like you've got a similar story where you started at the bottom in your dad's company. And then you eventually started running it. So I love it. I love it. What was the transition like? But when you did become CEO, I know it's been a long time now, but like the transition from your dad being an engineer and then you taking over as the non-engineer, although you'd been there for a while. What was that transition like? Because my understanding was that he was still involved for quite some time, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And he was very much everybody knew who the boss was, let me put it that way. He was the final decision maker in most things. But I did learn early on, I would always go and research the different opportunities of what we were going to do and how we might do it. And I would bring it to him and I'd want to explain all the details about it. And eventually one day he said, don't bring me problems, just bring me solutions. And in my mind, the light went off that said, he's really trusting me to run this organization and do the things that need to be done. And it's just out of respect that you go and take things and make sure that they're in alignment with an overall vision. And so transitioning into the CEO role was, I might say, a bit challenging, because what I was taking on was a very company that had been run very traditionally. And I knew it was going to be my job to take it into the next century, if you will, into the next generation of how engineering looked at solving our clients' greatest needs, and that's how to get their work done and make it easier on them, but incorporate a lot of different technologies and things of that nature. So with that required a cultural shift to occur, actually a complete cultural change. That's what really got us to where we are today. But I would say that cultural changes are a minimum of a 10-year process in many instances. We have been very blessed to have a lot of very long-term employees. I mean, we celebrate birthdays and anniversaries every month, and it's always, I mean, very common to have somebody who's north of 30 years being recognized on any given celebration. So
Wow.
the transition was interesting because I would say I set out to take the organization from a family-run organization to what I call a professionally led organization. So today we've broken over 300 employees and 60 plus million in annual revenues, but we were at a point where we were running well, but running more in the family-based environment, right? We didn't have a lot of systems and policies and procedures in place that were scalable to be able to take a company and grow it so that it could ultimately be delivered into the hands of the next generation at some point. So that became one of my visions. And the other was to really bring in a lot of technology and business processes so that we weren't just crafting our practice, right? Our art. Engineers tend to want to design a project and they fall in love with it and they move towards a model of perfection. But at some point, it's a business. And even though you are excellent at your craft, at your art, at your engineering, you need to run it in a way that is efficient and it's profitable, plus you're delivering to the client an amazing product, right? You want to bring in new technologies and different thought processes to save them in construction and other areas, but to solve their problems, do it efficiently and to do it with making a profit. So,
Yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, I as you know, I'm a structural engineer, worked for Boeing for 7 years, and I very much know that the engineering culture can be a bit different, right? Engineers are a nuanced bunch. But in hindsight, you'd probably agree with me that it was probably an advantage for you not to be an engineer, right? I mean, you're a very creative guy. I know you're a big visionary guy, and that's not second nature to engineers. So for you to not have that engineering background actually probably really helped you in that role and really getting that business to the next level, I imagine.
it did very much so. It allowed me to break out of the norms of the silos of just because we've done it this way before doesn't mean we have to do it this way again.
Yeah.
And in fact, almost a funny story, I would go into strategic planning sessions with my team, and we would go fairly deep into the organization, sometimes 2 or 3 layers deep with those that we brought into the strategic planning process. And we ultimately had to create what I'll call our own language because we used, have you ever heard of the book called Traction and the Entrepreneurial Operating System? Well, that's really for a startup company, but we took that system and used it so that we could create a language so they could understand their tactical viewpoint, you know, their inductive thinking versus my deductive thinking. And so that they could see that even though I'm talking about things that could be 5 and 10 years out in the organization, they needed to be able to take their 90 days, their rocks, you know, the different aspects of it and work towards that 1-year goal, the 3-year goal, and the 5-year vision or 10-year vision that we were setting out there. And that every activity that they took from a tactical perspective on a daily basis to solve problems for clients and deliver projects needed to be another step towards the long-term goal. Yeah. And so that was an interesting paradigm shift because they'd look at me like I was crazy because I was thinking so far out, and they were like wanting to look at their watch and go, look, I got a project I need to go deliver. I need to go get some work done. Yeah, what they didn't realize is that we were working on a mindset, how to see things well out into the future and how to position ourselves just like working for Boeing. When a plane leaves the airport, if it's going overseas, just a couple of degrees off on its trajectory, and it's going to land in a completely different country, right?
Mhm.
And so the same thing can happen if we're not paying attention to where we're headed as we set visions for an organization and the tactical uh, actions that we take each and every day.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm very familiar with EOS. I'm a part of a entrepreneurs organization chapter here in LA, and there's a lot of EO members that use EOS for their businesses. And I actually, when I was president last year of my chapter, I implemented EOS at the chapter level to help run the
Yeah,
board.
nice.
I had 10 board of directors on there, and we set up our 90-day rocks and milestones to kind of achieve a plan that we had for the year. And it's a great system. A lot of people have used that. Although I haven't heard people modifying it, so it's interesting to hear that you had to modify it for what you guys wanted to do. But certainly by breaking it down and breaking down this big idea of a 5 or 10 year goal, breaking it down for the engineers to say, okay, this is what we got to do in the next 30 days to support that. Certainly those bite-sized chunks, I think, could be pretty helpful for engineers to grab onto. So
Yeah,
good
we
job.
called it the map, and we actually
Oh,
printed
okay.
it out on boards. I have one behind my desk. Actually, that black square that you can see blurred out is the map. I still have them all over the office today, and it
Okay.
just became a language system for us to be able to understand that strategic planning is such an important part of what we do, so that we're ultimately reaching our goals and then setting new goals all the time,
Hmm.
as opposed to just delivering a project and then going to find a next project and staying focused just in the project world. But seeing the big
Yeah.
picture of where the macroeconomy is going, where the clients that we serve, a lot of our clients are state or municipal based clients. And so they've got a big, broad base of solutions that they're going to put into play. And we need to understand how we can see it from a larger perspective and how these different projects fit together.
Yeah. What were the biggest challenges you had in that transition?
You know, we've already talked about culture, and that was really probably one of the biggest. The other was what I call pedigree, right? There was this belief that since I wasn't an engineer, a PE, that how could I understand and deliver leading an organization without having, project specific skills and experience.
Mm.
But I proved that out over time. I was very patient and just worked with people to let them see that I was here to help them succeed. And I think that was the most important thing, is to be a collaborative, inclusive leader that brings people in, asks for their opinion, works to make sure that they are progressing professionally in their career, that we are actually doing a good job of serving our clients, and that we are putting business practices into place so that we can deliver our projects better and more effectively. The one thing about this style of business is back in the 70s, the lawyers came in and said, I think you guys should price your projects based on selling hours, which was
Mm.
really not a good tool, because what you don't want to do is just sell an hour, right? You want to look at a project, get the overall scope of the project, and then go apply efficiencies to deliver that project in the best, most creative way possible. That
Mm.
then gives you a lot of motivation to be able to become far more profitable. I used to look at it kind of like uh, being up against a union, where people were thinking, well, I'm going to get paid by the hour no matter what I do. And my mindset was, no, be an entrepreneur and apply new and different levels of thinking to deliver more effectively, to give the client, we always wanted to give the client more than they asked for. So we were creating specific systems that allowed the client, this was in the early days before computers became so prevalent and we had cloud computing and things like that, but we were creating systems out on the web before people were actually putting their projects on the web, where we would upload our drawings and give the client what we called the over-the-shoulder review. As you well know, many times you'll start a project, excuse me, and you won't actually deliver anything till 15, 30, 50, 70, 90, and 100%. And so what we did was we gave the client a continuous look without us knowing that they were looking, right? They could log into a web portal on Saturday morning and see where their project was at. So now it gave us continuous feedback. It gave us that open opportunity to say, I want your feedback before I get 15% down the road or 30% down the road. And you go, no, you got your ladder on the wrong wall. Let's pull it down and move it over here. And you're basically in a start over. So that was, I know I'm kind of running down a different road here, more of a production and a creative and an entrepreneurial style of the business. But those were the kinds of cultural differences that I found inside of the organization that I needed to bring awareness to so that we could address them in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I mean, look, I have 300-person company there. That's not a small company. That's a really good sized business. And as you scaled, and I know you eventually have sold the business, how long was it in your mind that you were going to be selling the business? And like we talked about, you're the namesake, right? The Binkley of Binkley and Barfield. So like, what was that going on in your head in terms of getting the business ready for sale, or just even emotionally understanding that, hey, it's time for you to move on, and we'll get to what you move on to in just a second. But that mindset that you had of getting the business ready for sale, what was that like?
That was, I mentioned it earlier, professionalizing the organization. But I will tell you, just like we do in real estate, we get educated. And so I spent well over a decade in the education field learning about mergers and acquisitions, ownership and leadership transition. We instilled an ESOP into the organization so I could teach the employees through the gift of shares that they now had the opportunity to act, think, and do the things as an owner would do them. So it became a teaching tool and a kind of work in process. We actually had the ownership of the ESOP at about 25% when we sold the company, and people benefited greatly from that, from the growth of the shares. But by doing that, it required us each year to do evaluation, and just like you would from an outside auditor. If you were a publicly run company, you needed to have the value of the shares. Mm-hmm. So you needed to set up structures and reporting and the things in your financials and different aspects of the organization. So going back to that preparation, it was a long journey. And I didn't do it with the intent to sell. I did it with the intent to understand when something was right or not right. So let me give you an example of that. My first property that I bought was it's still one of the largest single properties that I've bought without bringing in syndicated dollars. But it was knowing what to do when the opportunity arose. So the educational aspect in preparing the business to be available for its next birth and life in a new arena required knowing when it was time. We're always getting offers. We would get letters every week, somebody wanting to talk to us, and we just wouldn't entertain any conversations. We were set with the organization as a employee-owned company and building it towards that place where ultimately the goal was to make it 100% ESOP. It didn't go there because that was going to require a lot of burden on the next generation through debt and how to buy out the existing ownership. We don't need to run off down that trail, but it was through a lot of preparation. I would go to seminars, I would go to training, I would read. I read a lot of books, and then ultimately, you asked me. Part of the question was how do you mentally get prepared for something like that. And since this is a very tightly held family organization, that was probably the greatest struggle that I had, because in my role, I feel a tremendous responsibility for the livelihood of the people, who serve in this organization. And so, I'm responsible for their families. I'm responsible that their kids have shoes and they have, food on the table. And so I didn't take that lightly in any way, shape, or form. And I would never take the company out to bid to sell it to the highest bidder. We always knew that if something was going to happen, it was going to be a collaboration of collective cultures that actually enhanced each other. A friend of ours was creating a startup where he was bringing together a multitude of firms across the nation to build a firm that's got a focus where the independent characteristics of the firm are retained, but through ownership, they now have the resources across all the different organizations that belong inside of that main entity. And so when he walked through the door and shared his vision on what that was going to be, that gave us something to really get serious about. And so we brought it to our board and our ownership, and everybody wanted to hear more. I can't say everybody was, jumping on board right at the time, because I think there was a fear of that would take our independence away from us. But at any rate, that was something that allowed us to kind of move to those next steps. And I would say the biggest thing was education and being prepared, so that when the time came, I knew what to look for, I knew what to expect, and I knew how to make the right decision. And I can say I'll say it, that I'm proud of the fact that we didn't lose our people, and we didn't go into a situation where we were, looking to cut costs and eliminate, and consolidate different overhead aspects. In fact, we did the exact opposite. We brought in the people who support us that aren't necessarily working on specific projects that are available to the client. Our support services is the term we use for that group, being business development, IT, accounting, marketing, and legal. And we put all those people into a position where they were owners of profit units in the new organization, so they could have confidence that we weren't going to do this and eliminate jobs, but we were going to do this to enhance people's upward trajectory for their own professional livelihood.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that you really had to find the right buyer for that, right? Because it's not like you're just doing some raw EBITDA multiple of a purchase. I mean, if you're bringing the stuff in-house, it's costing money to do that, but you got to have a partner, or the person that's buying the company, to understand that this is an investment in a longer term play, and not just trying to reduce expenses to try to increase EBITDA.
No, that's right.
And do the
EBITDA is an important part of it. Don't kid yourself. That was part of the professionalism of the organization. It was to bring in a company together that knew how to function as a business while being highly professional and delivering on the engineering products. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about why a lot of companies don't make it into the second generation. And we're fortunate to have third generation. My daughter works here, our oldest daughter, and she runs our emerging technologies segment of the business. But most businesses struggle because that person who started the business struggles with letting go and allowing other people. And I would say that one of the things that I had to learn was to bring in great people who were highly skilled, but generally had an entrepreneurial side to them, which meant if they weren't going to be satisfied for the long term here, they would take their skills and apply them someplace else in the market. Mm-hmm. So to bring in and change a culture that allowed that entrepreneurial growth in all these different people, you have to trust them. You have to give them autonomy in certain segments of the business, and then create an environment where they're rewarded for their contributions, and they are growing professionally, and they're being engaged in the decision-making process. So yeah, that was a lot of that went on.
Yeah. So how long ago did the sale go through?
So that was, it's been about, I guess about 18 months now. So
Okay.
it was, yeah,
But
August.
as part of that transition plan, you're still there, right? You're still acting CEO.
That's
Uh,
correct.
I understand for another 14 months or so.
No, my 2-year contract will be up this August 6th. So, but
Okay.
I'll continue to reside in my existing position. We're basically looked at as a division of the larger organization, if you will. And so we're still an independent operating company
Yeah.
that, has our officers. We no longer have an independent board of directors, and all of our shareholders were encouraged, if not required. Myself and Larry Barfield, my namesake business partner, he and I were required to roll equity into the new company, of which it's one of the best things we've ever done, I might add. And
Cool.
then we encouraged the other owners to do the same, and they all did, and in varying levels.
Yeah. So, okay, so your 2-year requirement is up in August, but you think you might still stay on past that?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah.
I guess anything could happen, but
Yeah.
yeah, for now, that's what I'm going to do. So,
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the next part of the show I wanted to talk about, which was real estate. I know
mhm.
you've been involved in real estate for quite some time as a personal investor in your own projects and also as a limited partner. What's that starting to look like, and how does your previous real estate experience, how's that kind of folding into now working with other investors and growing that business with Robin?
Yeah, so Real Equity Investment Partners is what we created to really launch ourselves into this next venue of life, this next space of life. And I will tell you that I knew from the very first time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and started thinking about the concept of the ESBI, the quadrant, that was where I was meant to be. I knew that someday I would be in that space and I would be there full time.
On the I quadrant.
In the I quadrant, the B and the I quadrant. Actually, today I run in all four quadrants.
Yeah.
Still, it's just you get taxed on the left side and you are able to make passive income on the right side. So fundamentally, everything that I've done for the development of my career in the engineering business is applicable to the real estate business. And you might say, well, how is that? Well, they're both people businesses. Even though you're managing some technical aspect, whether it's investing or project delivery for, structures, like we design a lot of bridges as well, then you're still in a people business. It's all about the people and serving the needs of those people. So in the investing side of the world, we need to understand what our investors are looking for. How do we help solve their problems? Do they have tax problems? Do they need, cash flow? What is it that they're looking for to accomplish through their investing? And so we have really kind of dove into a lot of different asset classes. I started my real estate investing by the McDonald's theory of going and acquiring properties underneath the engineering companies in various locations. And so that was an easy way to understand how to help control part of the tenant base anyway, and really work into the office space market, and then launched into self-storage market, which I know you're moving into with a great vengeance soon, which is a fantastic market because you don't have the tenants complaining, and you can basically use a hose to clean out that space when somebody leaves. And so many times people in that space just put stuff in their storage unit, lock the door, and forget about it, and just reluctantly continue to pay rent, even though they know that the value of what they're saving is no longer even worth what they're paying rent on.
Yeah.
So to kind of bring the full circle to your question, it's it's really a great launch pad. And from now, I'm still working through the leadership transition of the organization. And so, again, I hold that responsibility very near and dear to my heart, that we make sure that we've got the right people in place so that when it is time for me to move into real estate on a full-time basis, then I'm not leaving a void behind me. I don't want to create collateral damage in any way, shape, or form from the decisions that I make. Because it's not about me. It's about the organizations, both Binkley Barfield and Real Equity Investment Partners, being successful and being successful serving our clients. So, again, multiple asset classes. We do multifamily as well. We've been getting into a lot of the alternative different. We did a Bitcoin mining fund. We've done the carbon scrubbers. And so a lot of different asset classes, as you well know. I mean, we're in a lot of the same educational and circles together.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's great. So on those initial properties that you were talking about, were you buying the land that the Binkley and Barfield offices were located on? Is that what you were referring to? The buildings that you were buying?
Yeah.
Got it. And so that those ones that you bought, was that separate and outside of Binkley and Barfield? Was that
Yes.
Brett buying those, or was that the company buying those?
So my business partner, Larry Barfield, and I created a separate company called Jackal, which was the only word we could come up with that entertained all the initials of our children. So it was Jordan, Ashton, Kirsten, Lane, and Lisa.
Oh, cool.
So it's Jakll. People think of it like the jackal and from history and Egyptian history, but that's not what it is. And so we created an LLC and started buying up the various assets, and it's worked out well. We still own those assets today, and are still business partners in that LLC.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable how successful business owners can be if they acquire the property along the way, and the business can actually service the debt for those properties.
Yes.
On the exit, a lot of times it's the property or the buildings that wind up being worth more than the business. And I know that's like my type of avatar are the entrepreneurs. I try to encourage entrepreneurs, like, hey, you're doing really good in your business, but maybe you should start to think about real estate or some other passive income streams to help supplement that for when you sell your business or during various business cycles. It's good to have some other streams of income. So I'm totally with you on that, and I love to hear that's how you started out.
I'm actually coaching my business partners on that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. One of the other areas that I'm spinning off into is actual coaching. And so I've got several students that I meet with on a monthly basis and working through various methodologies, both in business, life, and in investing.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll have to include some of that info in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. But I was going to say it's also interesting. You briefly mentioned it, how your experience through the company is very relevant to you doing what you're doing with real estate investment partners now, and that experience really just kind of grows on it, right? Like, and you never really know which experiences are going to help you how in the future, right? It just kind of, you get this experience, you get a little bit of wisdom, and you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and let me do this. And it for me, I've seen it translate a lot into real estate that I never really expected until now I'm here. And I think I had my business I sold, and I had 75 employees, and didn't know really how things were going to pan out or what I was going to do. I loved real estate, and so that's the direction I went. But it's amazing how many of those skills I learned from running a business that are really applicable in real estate. And certainly as an engineer, evaluating risk and stuff like that's also really helpful. But it's great to see these skills kind of grow on one another and help propel you forward in the next venture and the next chapter of your life.
Yeah, and it's like we hear and learn, build a business that supports the lifestyle that you want to live and pays you to do it, right? And I think that's what real estate does. And fortunately, I've come to the place in this business, in the engineering business, where we've attracted such quality people that are so good at their job, and I've been willing to delegate and let go of holding on to a lot of the detailed aspects of the business, so that I'm at a place where, I can just let others run with it. And there's certain times when I, bring that vision viewpoint, or that experience with my entrepreneurial side of me, my drive side of me, my side of seeing things a little longer down the road, further down the road than a lot of people do. And I'll bring that contribution to the table, and maybe help course correct how my current team is looking at it. But outside of that, I've really come to a place where, I can kind of, the old saying, I can kind of have my cake and eat it too, which gives me a lot of freedom with time, which allows me then to be able to go and, I'm not one of those people that turns the TV on very often. I read books, and Robin and I spend our weekends in educational settings where we're giving up our free time, not to go sit on a beach and, sip something with a umbrella in it, but to actually go and educate ourselves and interact with other professionals in the real estate and investing world. And that's where we get a lot of our energy from. We just absolutely, the hair on my arm stands up, and it's just electrifying to be in such a positive atmosphere with other people who are looking to just do great things, and even, leave generational wealth and leave legacies behind, which I'd like to share with you is one of the main things that Robin and I are doing. We've actually created a family office, and our children are all part of our family office, and they know and work with us on all of our investments, and have a good understanding of all the work that we've done through the legal structure to make sure that we've got our asset mapping done correctly, so it's protected, and it's in a position where it won't get caught into inheritance taxes and things of that nature. And they understand those things, and they apply their skills in short-term rentals. They do it in our content creation and development. They do it. One of our daughters works for us full-time as our chief of staff. And so that's another beautiful thing that's occurred out of being able to create this whole new business. And I like to say, I'm not going to retire. I'm going to simply rewire, and I'll shift out of the engineering business someday into the real estate business. But right now, I, again, have such a strong support team with Robin and Kirsten and all the professionals that we use on a contractual basis to help us, keep things going and working the right way, much as you do. That allows me that freedom to be able to continue to do both until such time as I decide otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and I know you're newly minted grandparents now too, so you got to have a little bit of time
Thank
for those
you.
beautiful grandkids of yours.
Yeah, and that's definitely a motivation for that freedom to have that lifestyle. Especially while they're young. We don't know, what kind of education they'll do, if it'll be homeschool or private school, public school, or whatever it is. But when you get locked into the daily school activities, things are different. But while they're young, we'd love to be able to take them and travel and spend, extended periods of time in other places, and take their parents as well. Let them work remotely with the children in a different location, and gain the benefits of time and togetherness through the real estate, and being able to delegate well in the professional engineering world.
Yeah, I love it that you got your three girls and working in the family office, and it reminds me of one of my favorite sayings, that money's not everything, but it sure keeps the kids close.
Yeah. So I like to say, money can't buy you love, but it's the social lubricant. It reduces a lot of friction in life.
Oh no, you got great kids. I know. I've met Kirsten quite a few times, and she's amazing. The mother of your new grandkids, and no, you got a beautiful family inside and out. So I love.
Well, we're even doing book studies with them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're doing The Gap and the Gain right now.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, they were really getting into it. At first, we were trying some other books, and it almost felt like it was a force fit. It took a little time to figure out and to get them interested, and they've all come into their own places now where they've got their contributions, and boy, it's just it's amazing. The last time we got together for our book study, our 20 soon to be 21-year-old college student was the most dynamic person in the conversation. Her sisters told her that. They were like, we were so impressed with how you've taken this information, we looked at it from the author's perspective, then also looked at it how you can apply it in your own life, and realize the way you're viewing things so that you remain in the game.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it all boils down to that education and how we apply it.
Yeah, I love it. You're a great family man, a strong dad. I love to hear that. How's it been? You know, you've been a partner with Larry for a long time, and now venturing into, you know, being a partner, business partner rather, with Rob and your wife. How's that dynamic been, and any changes or differences now that you're kind of partnering with your wife on the real estate side of things? What's that like?
It is very interesting to work together as husband and wife. You know, years ago, people would say, well, why don't you hire Robin? And I was like, no, absolutely not. You know, we don't want to be at odds with each other, working together, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to give your spouse and your children instruction. You have to learn, in my opinion, to be more of an influencer than in control. You know, and that's the same in any business, but it's certainly different when you're moving into a family business. But we've got what I would call boundaries, where there's just certain times of the day where we're not engaged in talking about business, and it's just you know, we both have a passion for what we do, so it makes it easy. The only thing that we struggle with is the administrative tasks behind the scenes, and that's where Kirsten kicks in, and our other, you know, team of legal and accounting and you know, financial advising and things of that nature. But no, working together is really a beautiful thing, because we're best friends in the first place, so it allows us to spend time together and pursue, you know, different projects together and get creative. And we bring such differing styles of contribution to the table that it becomes a nice balance. It will be a different challenge when I'm not necessarily leaving to work in the office every day, and I think we'll have to figure that out, because currently our office is in the same open space together, so we'll need the ability to do things like this, be on a podcast and not be interrupting the other one. So we'll have to work out those areas, but you know, quite frankly, I've got the office space to build offices, so that's not going to be a concern for the long haul.
Yeah. I'm sure you've worked through bigger issues than that.
Oh yeah, no question about that.
No problem there. Yeah, I mean, look, Robin's amazing, beautiful person, inside and out, and I admire how well you support her as well. I know this is a newer venture for her. She came from medical background, and she's doing awesome things, and it's just it's fun to witness, or rewarding to witness you support her the way you do, and just to her just really blossom and become an amazing real estate investor and starting the company, and she's doing amazing things. And I know, you know, like the saying says, behind every successful man is a strong, supportive woman. Well, the same is true the other direction, right? So I know a lot of her success comes from the support that you give her. So just kudos to you for doing that, and while still running your other business. I think it's very admirable.
Yeah, thank you. We were driving home from one of the real estate guys' events, and we had Kirsten on the phone, and I was telling her what a great job Robin had done. She had been interviewed, and she had opened the event and done the introduction for Robert Helms, and I was just, you know, doting on her, and And she goes, and I was saying, yeah, behind every, great woman is an even greater man. And she goes, yeah, Dad, you're just mom's eye candy, I'm just there to escort her onto the red carpet, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it's a lot of fun. I'm really proud of her. And, again, I think I liken it back to my role as a CEO. When you build great teams, you've got to have good people who are independent thought leaders that can work in that independent, autonomous environment and provide great results without you micromanaging them.
Mm.
And that requires a tremendous amount of support and trust. And so I think going through that for so many years and building such a great team in the engineering world, it allows me to translate that straight into the next business. This one just happens to be my spouse.
Yeah.
But, like everyone, they need your support. They need your encouragement. They need your guidance. Sometimes they need your vision or your mentorship or whatever that may be. But it's not on a every moment, day by day basis. It's on an as needed basis.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody could be encouraged at any point all the time. So that's a given. But you don't have to interject and show somebody how to do something. You let them do it. And if they don't do it the way you would have done it, that's fine. You let it become its own system on its own by applying something, trying it, redoing it, play and do review, as we hear. And so that's a powerful place that we've had to really go through a lot. Next month we will have been married 30 years. So
wow.
We've seen the ups and the downs, and we've learned to understand that you've got to give the other one space, and you've got to be accepting, and you've got to be forgiving. That's just part of a good quality relationship is to not be dogmatic about things, and just be understanding.
Well, yeah, definitely hitting 30 years of marriage, you'll be able to add another chapter to your coaching business. It's
Right?
like, I know that doesn't come easy. It's like anything that's worthwhile. It's, you got to work at it. So congratulations on 30 years. That's amazing.
Or as the real estate guys will tell us, anything worth doing is worth doing wrong at first. And I think we both did that. So we're living proof that statement is true and correct.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, listen, Brett, this has been really helpful talking with you. If people wanted to learn more about you or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So they can reach out to team@realequityip.com and or go on our website and set up a time to meet if they'd like. And we'd love to further this conversation. If there's anything I can do to continue to help you, Chad, with CSQ Properties, well, I would love to do that. And I just want to tell you thank you for having a conversation with me today. I really enjoyed it.
I love it. What about if anyone wanted to get in touch with you regarding the coaching business? Are you still taking on clients in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. But the same team at realequityip.com.
Okay.
And we'd sit and have a consultation to make sure that I could bring value to what it is they're trying to accomplish. There needs to be fit. Coaching is a symbiotic relationship where we're wanting to understand how to, bring a person to that next level. And so there needs to be a relational and even back to the cultural work, right? We need to have that fit. And so we want to have a consultation to see if that was something that we want to carry further and dig deeper. Because there's a lot of transparency that needs to be involved in a coaching relationship. You've got to build trust, and then you've got to dig deep and peel back the layers to find out what's holding you back from being the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Well, look, I know you really well, and anyone that was in that coaching program, they'd be in good hands because you've got an amazing background, incredibly generous and humble. I was reading through your core values on your company, and as I was reading those, I'm like, wow, this is really Brett right here. So I can tell that you really put a lot into that, and serving humbly was one of those core values, and it made me really think of you. So, anyways, super excited to hear your coaching, and you got some room for some more people there to help out because you're doing amazing things. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Brett. Well, appreciate you coming on the show. And again, we'll put in the show notes. If anyone would like to get in touch with Brett, hear about what he's doing, reach out to Real Equity Investment Partners. And we'll see you in a couple weeks in Dallas.
All right. Thank you so much, Chad. Take care.
I loved hearing how Brett is using all of his experience that he gained running an engineering company into now running a real estate company. That's the same things that I've been doing for CSQ Properties. If you want to learn more about CSQ Properties, check us out at csqproperties.com or any social media at CSQ Properties. And don't forget, click the link below, subscribe to the CSQ channel, and also drop us some comments in the links below. Thanks a lot.